Coming up on Arirang News, the bodies of two more South Koreans have been found in Hungary where a tourist boat sank last week. Divers have been underwater in the Danube searching around the boat, but they could soon head inside of it. South Korea's GDP shrank in the first quarter, with exports down more than those of any major economy and a sharp fall in investment by businesses. And the U.S. is trying to recruit its European allies in its pressure campaign against China by asking them to stop doing business with tech giant Huawei. It's 4 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. We start with the latest from Hungary, where a boat carrying dozens of South Korean tourists sank in the Danube last week. Search teams recovered 2 bodies on Monday, raising the official death toll now to 9, with 19 others still missing. For the latest, we have our Kim Yo-jong on the line for us. Mo-jong, tell us more.
Sure, Devin. Well, on Monday afternoon, the South Korean search team in Hungary recovered a female body from the left side stern of the boat. The Hungarian team first spotted the body, and the South Korean divers went down to get it, and it was found to be of a Korean woman in her 50s. Earlier during the morning hours, the search team recovered another body, which was found to be of a Korean man who is presumed to have been in his 60s. His body was found on the banks of the Danube, 102 kilometers south of the accident site. A local resident first reported the body to the police, and the South Korean search team quickly dispatched divers to recover it. The 2 bodies will be sent to a local university for examination.
Right, so Mo-jong, it's around 9 a.m. in Hungary. What are the plans for the investigation today?
Well, Devin, the Korean team and the Hungarian authorities held a meeting just around an hour ago and to discuss the logistics of the search and the potential dangers involved. The details were about to be revealed soon, but as of now, just like yesterday, divers are once again expected to go underwater to look for the missing. The Korean search team is planning to try again to convince the Hungarian authorities to inspect the inside of the boat, since the female body found on Monday was spotted near the boat. The Hungarian government was against the move, citing safety concerns. Authorities are meanwhile pressing to raise the boat starting Wednesday and possibly have it out of the water by Sunday. That's all for now. I'll be back for more updates in our next newscast.
All right, thank you for that. Kim Yo-jong reporting there. Now, this Thursday, South Korea will observe Memorial Day. And ahead of that, President Moon is emphasizing the importance of respect and honor for those who served and sacrificed for the Republic of Korea. He was at a luncheon today with veterans and their families, where he said veterans' affairs are important to a country that's in desperate need of peace. Here's the president.
보훈이 잘 이루어질 때 국민의 안보 의식은 더욱 확고해지고 평화의 토대도 그만큼 두터워질 것입니다.
Moon also said his government will do its best to treat persons of national merit, their families and descendants with respect and give them more support. Now, there's been a confusing mix of messages from the U.S. regarding North Korea's short-range missile launches on May 9th. On Monday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did little to clarify Washington's official stance, saying the regime, quote, probably violated UN Security Council resolutions. That was in an interview in Switzerland with the U.S.-based Sinclair Broadcast Group. In contrast, President Trump has described the launches as, quote, some small weapons. Pompeo also said that the U.S. and international campaigns will ultimately bring about the results the world is looking for. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, has appeared in public for the first time in over 50 days. Her absence had prompted speculation that she'd been disciplined or sidelined after the summit in Hanoi ended without a deal. On Tuesday, Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported that Kim Jong-un watched a gymnastics and arts performance on Monday, and his sister Kim Yo-jong went with him. His sister had served as his secretary in his nuclear summits with President Trump, and last week the South Korean daily, the Chosun-ilbo, reported that she'd been disciplined and that Kim Young-chul, also seen with the leader for a second day in a row, had been sentenced to hard labor. The U.S. is still holding a North Korean ship suspected of transporting coal for the regime. In the meantime, though, the ship it transferred the coal to is still at sea and appears to be heading for Vietnam or China. Our Lee Ji-won has more.
The bulk carrier suspected of carrying the North Korean coal transferred by the now seized vessel Wise Honest seems to have lost its place to dock. Voice of America reported Tuesday that according to a ship tracking website, Dongtan, a vessel operating under the Panama flag, changed direction away from its believed destination, Indonesia. After being rejected by the Malaysian authorities, its original destination in early May, the vessel had been anchored in nearby waters for 3 weeks until it seemed to have decided to sail towards Indonesia. This goes against the Malaysian government's orders to not leave Malaysian territorial waters while investigations are underway. The ship sailed for 2 days towards Indonesia in late May. It then stopped some 240 kilometers away, and an unnamed source quoted by VOA projected that the wait was due to a long holiday in the country, which could delay the ship from unloading the coal. But while the ship seemed to be waiting for the holiday to be over, it suddenly turned around and headed north last Friday. According to the ship tracking website, Dongtan is likely to be heading towards Vietnam or China, raising speculation that it's also been rejected by Indonesia's port authorities. This comes after Indonesia seized Wise Honest, a vessel suspected of carrying coal out from North Korea in 2018, and handed it over to the US to be dealt with under US and international laws. However, the coal had been released by the Indonesian government in February after it accepted an Indonesian broker's request to sell the coal as a certification of origin showed that the coal was from Russia. A UN expert panel, however, said that the 26,500 tons of North Korean coal worth $3 million should not be sold. Meanwhile, UN Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, Andrea Thompson, warned that the crackdown on illegal ship-to-ship transfers will be toughened during interviews with various media outlets. She added that this is in line with President Trump's orders to up the pressure campaign on the North. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now in football, after beating Argentina in the final group stage match of the U20 World Cup in Poland last weekend, South Korea are set to renew their long-standing rivalry with Japan in the knockout round of 16. The teams haven't met at the U20 World Cup since 2003, when Japan beat South Korea 2-1. The big match kicks off at Lublin Stadium at 5:30 p.m. local time on Tuesday. For our viewers in Korea, that's midnight on Wednesday, Korea time. The winner will take on either Senegal or Nigeria in the quarterfinals on Saturday. More discouraging news for the already struggling South Korean economy. GDP actually shrank in the first quarter, and by the biggest amount since the 2008 financial crisis. Our business correspondent Kim Yo-jong reports.
South Korea's GDP shrank 0.4% in the January to March period compared to the previous quarter. That's 0.1% lower than the Bank of Korea's previous estimate released in April. It's also the largest fall since the fourth quarter of 2008. On year, Korea's GDP grew 1.7%. The central bank said construction investment and exports fared worse than estimated. Local exports plunged more than 3% on a drop in shipments of semiconductors and LCDs amid ongoing U.S.-China trade tensions and slowing global demand. According to an OECD report, South Korea's exports saw the sharpest drop among the G20 countries, recording $139 billion of exports in the first quarter, down 7% on quarter. Construction investment shrank 0.8% as investment in residential building construction decreased. Facilities investment dropped 9%, driven by decreases in machinery and transportation equipment, the sharpest fall in about a decade. Private consumption went up slightly by 0.1%, and government consumption increased 0.4% on increased healthcare benefits. Real gross national income fell by 0.3% on quarter to $383 billion. The Bank of Korea is set to reach its growth target of 2.5%. The local economy will have to expand around 1.3% in the second quarter and 0.9% each for the remaining 2 quarters. Kim Yo-jong, Arirang News.
Consumer price growth in South Korea has remained below 1% for the fifth month in a row, signaling weak sentiment among consumers and investors. According to Statistics Korea, consumer prices edged up 0.7% on year in May, far lower than the Bank of Korea's target goal of 2%. The agency attributed the sluggish inflation to low domestic demand and a drop in the prices of petroleum goods compared to the same period last year. Analysts say if inflation stays low, it could hurt consumer spending and private investment. It's time now for an in-depth look at the global market action today. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Kiwoom Securities. Mr. Yu, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So stocks on Wall Street mixed, but mostly down on Monday. Investors still worried about the trade war, and major tech stocks, especially Google, feeling the pressure of potential regulation. Take us through the global trade, please.
Yes. If you look at the U.S. market, tech stocks fell on Monday. This was the first day of trading in June. Because of the possibility that U.S. government is planning to target a host of big companies in the industry, particularly the tech industry, with antitrust and business practice probes. Stocks like Alphabet, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple all had a quite significant decline in share prices, which resulted into NASDAQ composite dropping more than 1.6%. But S&P 500, it only declined by 0.3%, while Dow was up slightly. We think that, though, this kind of probe is not going to be a long-term process. Given that the current trade war between U.S. and China, the primary focus is to have global competitiveness of the major tech companies for U.S. to win against China in terms of this fourth industrial revolution industries. So I think it's a short-term impact. It's not going to probably last for a long period of time. This is why I think the Korean market has showed some recovery, quite strong recovery on Monday. And also today, it only fell by 0.04%, pretty much flat, while the Kosdaq was up 0.72%. However, though, continuation of the trade negotiation not happening with the possibility of trade war continuing, Chinese stocks have fallen more than 1% today, and this kind of trend will be continuing where the volatility will remain to be such as long as the trade war continues between two countries.
Yeah, well, on another front of the trade area, President Trump has warned that starting June 10th, the U.S. is going to impose tariffs on all goods from Mexico, starting at 5%, gradually going up to 25%. There's significant opposition to this within the U.S. Do you think they'll go ahead with these tariffs, or what do you see happening in Washington?
Well, Trump wants to have it. I think that, though, some of the changes that we're seeing is that not everyone in the U.S. is agreeing with these policies. Business advocates, companies, and trading groups are ringing alarming bells about the potential fallout from the Trump administration's decision to threaten Mexico with tariffs. Now, Trump have said that raising the taxes on all goods imported from Mexico on June 10th by 5%, and then they will continue to push it up to 25% by October unless the illegal migration crisis is handled. So if this is, they're linking the current policies with economic policies with the illegal immigration crisis. I don't think that this is the right decision that Trump is making. I think that a lot of the U.S. The government, as well as the politicians, are saying this is the wrong move. Trump is clearly facing a pushback from many sides, including Democrats, Republicans in Congress, corporate leaders, and the retailers, who will be probably getting the cost of this tariff increases on their table. So we think that, though, Trump will be using these kind of tools to improve the fair policies amongst the countries. At the end of the story, we are expecting more aggressive measures to boost the economies because of these tariff issues. So yes, in the short term, it is making some uncertainties of the market, but in a longer term, we think that additional liquidity will be a positive news in the long run.
Well, back here in Seoul, the Bank of Korea says the local economy GDP contracted by 0.4% in the first quarter compared to the quarter before. This is the worst performance in 10 years. It looks like the Kospi was up and down today, but how has the market responded?
Right. I mean, the market really didn't respond much on this news because this is not a newly accepted news. Because we already saw numbers such as minus 3% Q-on-Q numbers before, it is minus 0.4% rather than 0.3%. So it is slightly below the expected numbers. So this is not really making a big dent in terms of the stock market performances. I think the more important thing is the future growth in terms of Korea. And we are seeing the Korea's 10-year government bond rate falling sharply to around 1.67, 1.68%. But that number is much higher than the number that we saw in 2016 or 2015. The year-on-year growth rate of GDP on the first quarter is about 1.8%. We think that number is probably the bottom amount in terms of the growth rate. I think that what market will be watching more closely is whether or not there is a possibility of rate cut happening. We already saw the Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, decided to lower interest rate by 0.25% today and recording a record lower level of 1.25%. So Korea, at where the rate it is, 1.75%, we think that the potential for the rate cut is coming. Of course, maybe the BOK might be waiting until the U.S. cuts the rate first. But nevertheless, we think that the more liquidity is expected to come into the market, which is definitely positive news in terms of looking into the future.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, speaking in the Netherlands on Monday, America's top diplomat has called on the U.S. European allies to join in turning the screws on the Chinese tech giant Huawei. Kim Yo-jong reports.
The United States is discouraging its European allies from doing business with Huawei, intensifying its pressure campaign against Beijing. According to Reuters, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told his Dutch counterpart that the U.S. aims to level the playing field with China.
The Chinese had a very unfair set of rules, and they've been after American markets in ways that are deeply inequitable. And their government is involved in their businesses in ways that American companies never will be and shouldn't be. We're simply trying to level this playing field. And when we do that, I'm confident that both nations will be successful and grow.
Speaking on the sidelines of a U.S.-Dutch entrepreneurship conference in The Hague on Monday, Pompeo also highlighted that it's not free trade when foreign companies are required to submit their information to the Chinese Communist Party when investing in China. Referring to the security threats associated with establishing Huawei's 5G infrastructure network, Pompeo urged European allies to join hands with the U.S. in pressuring the Chinese tech giant that has close ties with China's government.
Our ask is that our allies and our partners and our friends don't do anything that would endanger our shared security interests or restrict our ability to share sensitive information.
To this, Pompeo's Dutch counterpart Stef Blok explained that security is a crucial part of his country's China policy, adding that changes to the Netherlands' 5G auction process could be announced as soon as this summer. Kim Yo-jong, Arirang News.
The tech giants of Silicon Valley, like Amazon and Google, could be facing investigations by regulators for possible antitrust violations. Kan Young-woo reports.
The U.S. Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Justice have reportedly divided up oversight of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, clearing the path for possible investigations into antitrust violations. Citing anonymous sources, Reuters reports the Justice Department's Antitrust Division met with FTC officials in recent weeks and agreed to hand over the jurisdiction to the Justice Department to launch potential antitrust probes of Apple and Google. The FTC was given the authority to inspect Amazon and Facebook. While there have been no official statements from the government agencies, the latest moves, if confirmed, could be a sign of closer watches on the tech giants that have faced rising criticism over disinformation and privacy violations. The question of whether these companies violate antitrust regulations has long been the subject of debate and industry complaints. In Congress, the chairman of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust, David Cicilline, said lawmakers are looking into the tech giants' possible anti-competitive behavior, and the committee informed the companies of the investigation plans. Cicilline added that if the House probe finds wrongdoings, lawmakers will push the Justice Department and the FTC to dig deeper. The four tech companies declined to comment on the report. With the media frenzy about possible investigations from antitrust regulators, shares in Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple all fell on Monday. 강영우, Arirang News.
Apple has decided to shut down its iTunes music software after 18 years, with plans to rebrand its entertainment services this fall. At the annual Worldwide Developers Conference on Monday, Chief Executive Tim Cook announced that the media library for PCs will be replaced by 3 separate apps covering music, TV, and podcasts. The update will be part of the new Mac OS Catalina, and previous purchases and libraries will be maintained in each new app. Those who used iTunes to sync up their Apple devices can now use a tool located in Finder on their Mac computers. South Korea's biggest automaker, Hyundai Motor, is doing brisk business in the U.S., posting an increase in sales for a 10th consecutive month there. The gains were the result of the company's highest ever sales of SUVs, which jumped a whopping 25% in May compared to the same month last year. Hyundai says it sold more than 66,000 units in the U.S. last month, a 2% increase on year. It explained that it was helped by a focus on its core models, strong marketing support, and an exceptional product. Those born in the mid-90s or later, called Generation Z, are the first to have grown up with the internet and smartphones even as children. The concern has been that they would grow up glued to technology and social media, to the detriment of important areas of their lives. Oh Soo-young takes a closer look at Korea's young adults.
Here's a generation that doesn't quite understand how to go offline. 12-year-old Amy Chun is part of the digital-savvy demographic called Generation Z, born between the mid-90s to the late noughties. Swiping seamlessly through multiple devices and up to 5 social media platforms, she does her homework, makes friends with people halfway across the world, and uploads YouTube videos on gaming. But once you remove the screen, it could get awkward.
In real life, I'm not able to show all of my emotions because it gets a little bit embarrassing at times, but in social media or online, they would not be able to really see me, so I'm able to be more comfortable.
Due to their high-tech and hyper-connected upbringing, Generation Z is expected to have a different mentality from previous generations, with a new set of values and behaviours. Called digital natives, Generation Z are fast learners powered by search engines. They're multitaskers as well as natural content creators, armed with video editing and social media tools.
They are also keen contributors. So they have grown up with online platforms where they can contribute to blogs or Wikipedia or social media or YouTube videos, etc. And so when they come into the workplace or school, they also want to contribute. They want to be part of finding a better way to do things.
However, there are some concerns that constant connectivity creates an emotional disconnect. Analysts have linked the lack of face-to-face interactions with increasing levels of anxiety and depression among Generation Z.
But they're reaching out on social media to fill that void of connection. They want that connection. And if they get a response and they get people to reach back to them, they feel better. But when they don't, they can feel even worse and even more disconnected.
Another source of worry is what Generation Z called FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Everyone else is referencing some online thing that happened, whether it be something that happened in your friendship group or, an online viral trend that's spread, and they're not in the loop. They feel like they've missed out. And so social validation has started to be connected to online use in some ways.
Sociologists say it's critical that families and educators practice and promote regular face-to-face contact and offline relationships. to overcome the paradoxical implications of being broadly connected but feeling disconnected from reality. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this broadcast. Thanks for being with us. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.